Hi, everyone, and welcome to our featured crime analysis for episode 11. In episode 11, we covered the chilling case of Klaus O, a German employee suspected of poisoning as many as 21 of his coworkers. What was particularly alarming about this case was the fact that no one, not a single coworker or boss, had any idea of what he was doing. He was quiet, he was well-mannered, and from all anyone knew, he had never had a single argument with any of his fellow employees. So how typical is Klaus O in comparison to other poisoners? Is there a psychological profile that poisoners share that one day might help us sort out the likeliest suspect? The short answer is maybe. In spite of the fact that for hundreds of years, poison has been a convenient way to speed up an inheritance or get rid of an unwanted spouse, little research has been done on the personality of the poisoner. Now, part of this may be due to how often poisoners got away with it. It wasn't until the 20th century that we were any good at all at detecting poison. It may also be due to outdated stereotypes. For example, even in the media today, women are most often portrayed as professional poisoners. Third, there are other reasons besides psychological ones that someone might choose poison as a weapon. Since death by poison, unlike hammers, guns, or knives, can mimic a natural cause of death, using poison may tell us more about the intelligence of the perpetrator than about his or her personality. So here's what we know. Contrary to popular belief, the majority of convicted poisoners are actually men, overwhelmingly so when the victim is a woman. When the victim is a man, the poisoner is about equally likely to be male or female. As well as with other methods of murder, perpetrators rarely cross racial lines when they decide to send a victim to an early grave, meaning African Americans tend to poison other African Americans, Caucasians tend to poison other Caucasians, and so forth. On average, a poisoner is 5 to 10 years younger than his or her victim. In terms of careers, poisoners are overrepresented in the medical profession, perhaps not surprisingly. So we have more doctors, nurses, laboratory professionals, etc., who are poisoners, or caretaking professions like wife, mother, or nursing home attendant. Both of these have easy access not only to the means to kill, but they also tend to have vulnerable victims. The majority of poisoners knock off someone he or she knows, such as a child, spouse, friend, or acquaintance. What about the poisonous personality? We now believe that the number of convicted poisoners is just the tip of the iceberg, and that for every poisoner who's caught, there may be 20 to 30 that get away with it. So when we talk about the personalities of poisoners, we can really only talk about the personalities of poisoners who get caught. Still, we can make some educated guesses about the personalities of poisoners by studying the nature of the crime and the personalities involved with the published cases of convicted poisonings. Killing someone with poison by its very nature requires careful planning and deceit, so it probably comes as no surprise that poisoners tend to be cunning and sneaky. They also tend to be pretty creative. I've seen some poisoners who designed their murder plan in as much detail as if they were writing the script for a play. In relationships, they tend to avoid direct confrontation and instead rely on verbal and emotional manipulation to get what they want from others. Convicted poisoners also tend to have an underlying sense of inadequacy, and they compensate for this through an outward scorn for authority, a strong need to control, and a self-centered approach to relationships. They also tend to do a lot of daydreaming and fantasizing in which they see themselves as special or unique and getting either the recognition or the revenge that they desire. Now, in terms of childhood, convicted poisoners tended to be either spoiled as a child or raised in an unhappy home. So kind of coming from one of two extremes of the parenting spectrum. In some ways, the poisoner is like an irresponsible child who never grew up and is now determined to take what she or he wants, just as a child would take candy from a candy store. And because poison is often not detected initially, the power and control poisoners experience with success tends to increase their confidence in future endeavors. which may be why 40% of convicted poisoners do it more than once. As far as poisoners' motives, they're really not much different than that for other murders: money, jealousy, removing an obstacle, revenge, boredom, sadism, or political convention. Now, there are rarer motives for poisoning. There's a form of medical child abuse, commonly known as Munchausen by proxy, in which a perpetrator, usually the mom, harms a child to attract sympathy and attention from others. Now, this type of murder usually is an accident when the perpetrator's efforts to make the child sick go too far. Believe it or not, I've been contacted by more than one person who suspected someone they were living with or knew was poisoning them. Now, I don't have any way of knowing whether that was actually true or not. Statistics are against it, as less than 7% of murder victims in the U.S. die by poisoning. In 2016, for example, only 135 out of almost 20,000 murders involved poison. We're much more likely to be shot, stabbed, or strangled to death. Having said that, though, it happens. And I cannot imagine the fear of being poisoned and what that would be like to live with. Every situation is different, and there are different reasons why someone may believe that he or she is being poisoned. This can range from being in an abusive relationship to having unexplained physical symptoms that seem to be linked to someone's suspicious behavior, or it even could be a mental illness that causes paranoid ideas. So while I can't give individual advice to anyone, I can give general advice to anybody who has that fear. And my first piece of advice is to get some help. Now, of course, what kind of help depends on the situation. If you feel like your life is in immediate danger, you need to get away and call the police. If you feel seriously ill, call 911 to go to the emergency room. Also, go to your doctor with a list of the physical symptoms you are having and tell him or her what you suspect. If you have something that you think might be contaminated, bring samples with you. Get a referral to a local toxicologist who can help you decide what kind of workup you need. Also, get emotional support. Just having suspicion in and of itself is bad for your mental health, especially if you're stressed about it all the time. Whether or not your fears are true, the stress of worrying about poisoning can make your body develop some pretty strange symptoms. That's a pretty normal reaction to fear. If it is true, you will certainly need emotional support to deal with the betrayal that someone that you care about is trying to harm you. And if it's not true, you will have someone to help you deal with that too. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on episode 12. This is Dr. Joni Johnston, and you are listening to our featured crime analysis on Unmasking a Murderer.